Good morning. This is Stuart Battle with the LaRouche Organization. It is December 22nd, 2022. I am filling in for Harley Schlanger for today. Harley should be back with you again tomorrow, but I've got an update for you today, and I'm going to get started. So, as you probably heard, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, has come to visit or came to visit yesterday the United States. To much fanfare, a lot of people who were having dreams about Winston Churchill. There were unconfirmed reports that a strange green man came to steal everybody's Christmas money away. But who knows if that was true. Now, what Zelensky was, of course, doing was asking for more money, more weapons, more money. He actually made a comment just to know how much you're appreciated as the American taxpayer who has now paid over $100 billion to support Ukraine this year. Zelensky had made a point last week that we are grateful for American support, but it's not enough. It's a hint, but it's not enough. So, of course, that was the kind of the tenor of the discussion. He was paraded all over. He met with Biden. He of course spoke to the media. He gave an address to a joint session of Congress, and the money was poured out. Secretary of State Blinken announced that $1.8 billion of new military assistance will be sent to Ukraine. Of course, the most significant thing is that there was the announcement that the United States is going to send Patriot missile batteries to Ukraine, which also includes American personnel for training purposes. Now, these are much more advanced systems, and there's a lot of discussion about how much of a change of tide this might cause in the Ukraine war, which we'll see how that goes. Regardless, what we do know is that this is a major escalation, and Russia certainly sees it as such. In fact, the Kremlin spokesman Peskov said the other day when he was asked if Russia will strike the Patriot missile batteries if they come, and he said, "Oh, absolutely." So now the question is, why was Zelensky coming? Was it merely just because of wanting more weapons, or was there more going on? People may have heard, in fact, we reported on it yesterday, that there's been a growing amount of calls for peace and for negotiations. Of course, the most significant of this is Pope Francis, who has offered the Vatican as a area for peace talks. Significantly, earlier this week, French President Macron said something similar, where he made the point that Russia's security interests also need to be taken into consideration when it comes to peace negotiations. And what happened also on Tuesday was both the president of Croatia, Zoran Milanovic, who made the point that this is an American war that's being fought on the backs of Ukrainians, but with American money. And additionally, the Speaker of the Hungarian Parliament, a guy named Laszlo Kover, also said on Tuesday that he blames much of the cause for the war in Ukraine on Western decisions, including most specifically the taking away of areas of border areas that were previously Russian. There were old historically Russian areas. And in addition, in the case of Ukraine, turning those into virulently anti-Russian populations and nations and military bases, in this case. So you've got a very interesting dynamic of there being calls for peace, calls for sanity. And the question is did Zelensky come to Washington in order to browbeat those who are quote unquote on the fence, who maybe aren't quite willing to risk nuclear war and try to push that envelope and try to corral the troops, so to speak. Now, just to give a flavor of this, yesterday there was an article publication that was published right before Zelensky landed, before his plane landed, where the Atlantic Council, which is a historically British aligned and war hawk type of think tank, put out an article with a bunch of so-called experts on their take on the Zelensky trip. To give you a sense of it, here is Ian Brzezinski, who is the son of Zbigniew Brzezinski, who said that Zelensky will be here to convince Washington to shed its exaggerated fear that a swift Ukrainian victory would cause Russia to escalate the war with nuclear weapons. So Zelensky is there to convince Biden nuclear war is not really that big of a deal. It's not going to happen. Just arm us to the teeth and we'll go out and destroy Russia. There was also Melinda Herring, who was the deputy director of the Eurasia Center, who made the point that Zelensky is going to attempt to defuse the problem at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, which is the White House. She says the White House remains convinced that Ukraine can't win and that sending long-range missiles and planes would escalate the conflict. So that's to give you a flavor. The question to be asked is how much of the war party is frantic right now in pushing for a major escalation over the holiday period, over the coming days. Not simply more weapons and more arms, but a major offensive or something else. That's a very relevant question that should be asked. And therefore, especially with the consideration of Patriot missile batteries, what on earth do they think is going to happen? Do they really think that Putin is going to flinch and that Russia is just going to back down at some point? If we just continue to use American weapons to kill Russians and to threaten their, to continue this proxy war, is Russia really never going to respond and just let themselves be pushed into a corner and curl up and die? I think it's absurd, but it certainly is something that more of our leaders should be considering. And in that light, I will just make the point that earlier this week, Putin did travel to Minsk in Belarus, where he met with the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, and he said that Russia is going to consider taking up Belarus on their offer to host Russian nuclear warheads, which, of course, this follows on the heels of the announcement December 9th by President Putin that Russia was now going to be considering upgrading its nuclear policy from simply a second strike or retaliatory strike to now a first strike or a peremptory strike, which, of course, he made the point is in response to the United States' refusal to say that our nuclear policy is not itself a first strike, which it is, and it has been for years. So this is insane. This is absolutely madness. And the question is, where are the American people and Westerners generally? Where are they? Are Americans becoming the Germans of the 1930s? Is their silence going to get them killed in a nuclear annihilation? These are real questions that will very quickly cancel Christmas if we don't if we don't get more voices speaking out and get sanity to prevail. So I'm just going to conclude by saying that we should really take these coming days and hours, really, not to um, you know, go down into a fantasy state and a bunch of you know, kind of forgetfulness and celebrating these next days, because we're in a different period than we really have ever been in before. Um, these Patriot missile systems should not go to Ukraine. We should demand that they do not go. The military aid should be stopped for the sake of world peace. And as people may know, the Schiller Institute held a fantastic event last weekend where Helga Zepp-LaRouche made the call for widespread endorsements of the Pope's offer. And just to summarize, the Pope's offer has been made a few times now for unconditional peace talks to begin at the Vatican, which is to say, no conditions or ifs, ands, or buts, but no matter what, peace talks can be hosted at the Vatican between Russia and Ukraine to quickly bring an end to the conflict. And that's something that leaders around the world, citizens around the world, should join us in calling for. And the Christmas period, the holiday period, is a fantastic opportunity to have such a call for world peace, and you should join us in doing so and add your voice and act in history with us. So, with that, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Harley will be back with you, and talk to you soon.